Hi there, my name is Isha Ropert and welcome to this episode of Higher Life TV, where we take concepts that are considered esoteric, new agey or spiritual and show you how you can turn them into practical tools that you can apply today to greatly improve the quality of your life. And today I wanted to talk about healing. It is a word that comes up a lot, at least in the spiritual circles or new agey circles, about being a healer, seeking healing, healing from the past. And it can be a little bit confusing about what this is really referring to. It's easy to think of somebody healing from an injury or an accident where there's been physical damage or you've cut yourself. It is completely understandable that you would take time out and you would allow your body to heal, or you may seek out some medical help so that you can actually heal in the right way. So when we're talking about physical healing, it's common sense. But what are we talking about when we're talking about spiritual or emotional healing? How does that work? Because the wound is not obvious. It is not something that we can see physically, and it's often underestimated at how much these woundings, the emotional woundings and the psychological woundings, negatively impact the quality of our life. So much so that most of us are experiencing quite high levels of emotional and psychological wounding, and we're not aware of it at all. So this is something that we really tackle head on here at the Higher Life Academy. We really look at how suffering, which is born out of these wounds, is something that we can really identify in our life. It is a pattern, a wounding pattern. And when we're aware of how it operates in our system, how it drives the way we think, the way we feel, the way we engage with people, the type of relationships that we choose, how we treat ourselves. When we get really clear on that, it becomes possible to truly heal ourselves from these dysfunctional ways of being. It takes work to look at yourself this way, and it takes reviewing your past. All wounding is inherited. Sure, we go through really traumatic events in our lives. Many of us have faced deeply traumatic events which have increased the wounding. But even if you haven't, we are all generally born with some kind of psychological or emotional wounding. It is passed down from generation to generation. We've had generations that have experienced a lot of war, or they've been in concentration camps, or they've been kicked out of their country. Everybody has had somebody in their past that has experienced some kind of trauma, or the particular tribe that you come from, the nation, the color of your skin, the gender. We all carry woundings that are associated with these experiences. And right now we can feel a movement happening where we're starting as a collective, as a whole species, to really talk about some of these wounding patterns and how they're affecting us negatively. Some of the big ones have been abuses, sexual abuse, the recent Me Too campaign, where we start to look at how some of these patterns that have been normalized have greatly limited our ability to live in a truly equal, a truly nourishing, a truly fair world together. And I think most of us really want that. We want a world that works for everybody, where we all feel loved, we all feel accepted, allowed, nurtured and nourished. And therefore we have quite a bit of healing to do. So in this regard, healing specifically refers to what would be known as emotional neglect or emotional abuse, where you've grown up in an environment where your inner needs, your needs for emotional reassurance, or your psychological needs, the way that you think about yourself, the way that you identify with who you are, have somehow been shaped in a way that are very limiting. So we all struggle with the I'm not enough belief, and that would be seen as a psychological dysfunctional belief that creates wounding. If we really truly believe that we're not enough, we never feel truly good in ourselves. And that means that we spend all our time on this earth, or a lot of our time, trying to prove that we are enough. And we do this in a myriad of ways. But what it really means is that those beautiful gifts that we're born with, this creativity, this resourcefulness, we're not using it to create things that give us joy, that feel playful, that feel fun. We're using it in a way to show ourselves, our sensitive and vulnerable selves, and the world out there, that we are successful, that we have achieved, that we can look at ourselves in the mirror and say we are enough. And it is a really dysfunctional way to lead your life, because unfortunately, no matter how successful you are, when you come from this dysfunctional belief that you're not enough, you never feel good enough, even when you are the most successful, the most wealthy person in the room. And that's a really sad thing to come to understand, that even if you work really hard, this emptiness or this sense of not being enough just stays with you. And the big learning here is that emptiness, that sense of not being enough, is the wounding that requires the healing. So at the Higher Life Academy, what we're really doing is focusing on some of these core wounding patterns, such as narcissism, such as perfectionism. These are two big ones. We're looking at, how does this pattern work in me? How does this pattern work in my family? How does this pattern work out there in the society? And what kind of things do I think about myself? How do I feel when I think that about myself? What kind of actions do I take because I think of myself that way? And we start to get some awareness around that. Now, simply getting some awareness around that already starts the healing process. We're becoming aware that this is a dysfunctional way to think about ourselves. It's a dysfunctional way to feel about ourselves, and it is a dysfunctional way to act in the world. And therefore, we have time to not follow through on that way of thinking, that way of feeling, and that way of acting. And we can create space and over time choose a healthier way to think, feel, and act. Now, this does not happen overnight. Most of the dysfunctional patterns that drive our life have been driving our life since before we were born. They were driving our parents' life and our grandparents' life. Ask almost any person you know, and they'll find in their family, somewhere along in past generations, addictions, alcoholism, gambling, sex addiction, food addiction, violence, domestic abuse, sexual abuse. These kind of patterns have been prevailing all through human history. They are not new. We are just coming to face up to the devastating impact that these kind of patterns have had in the generations past. And we're starting to own the fact that it's not okay to live our lives in this way. It's not okay to turn a blind eye to some of these really, really disastrous, dysfunctional patterns. And we're having different conversations around it. We're speaking up about our experiences, and we're seeking to address the impact in order to stop this from following through to the next generations. And this is what healing looks like when we're talking about it from the level of psychology or the levels of emotions. We're seeking to own the fact that we have this psychological way of being in the world, and we need to have a healthy psychology. A healthy psychology is a healthy self-esteem, and this requires work. At the moment, most of us live our lives from an unhealthy self-esteem, where we're very much driven to prove to others how good we are, to prove to others our worth. We don't really feel like we have a right to be here. And there is a whole body of work around why we feel that way and what is behind it that we do teach here at the Higher Life Academy. The work that we're doing when we're going through the healing process is to let go of that more fragile way of identifying with ourselves, to stop identifying with our ego self and looking to drive our self-esteem from that ego self. What we're doing is replacing it with a more evolved version of us that is built off our core strengths, our virtues, our archetypal patterns, something that we were born with. And when we start to identify with that self, the esteem that we derive from that self is more authentic, it's more sustainable and more consistent. And we can go out in the world and really show up to others and to ourselves from this more authentic self. This whole process of moving away from a socially conditioned self, an ego self, and choosing a more empowered, creative, and authentic self is healing in this work. So it's a huge topic, healing. Obviously, there's a whole profession out there that focuses on spiritual, psychological, and emotional healing. There is psychology, there's philosophy. So today I just wanted to really nut it down to when we're thinking about healing in the context of personal transformation, or healing in terms of wanting to feel more worthy, wanting to feel more loved and valuable in our lives and in this world. We're really talking about those psychological patterns that really have us thinking that we're not okay, we're not good enough, and that we have to use our time and energy proving that we are. If you just focus on being more aware of the patterns that show up in you and the way that they drive a misuse of your life force energy, you're already taking a huge deep dive into the healing process and kicking off your recovery. Now, if you'd like to know more about healing in the context of personal transformation and the work that we do here, visit the Academy at www.higherlifeacademy.com, or simply email me or book a call and we can talk through how this process, the work that we do here, might be really beneficial for you. So until next time, take care and love life.